Welcome back to another Battlefront update. Today is the day we've been long waiting for, the day that we've been anticipating for, and despite numerous delays, we kept on hoping and having high expectations for the new mode, which is of course Capital Supremacy. And despite its limitations, the mode is a lot of fun and brings a breath of fresh air to the game. However, it's still far from perfect, and one of the major downfalls is the lack of maps available for it. Which fortunately isn't a difficult solution, and we've already got a tease of what could quite possibly be the next map for Capital Supremacy. With that said, we also have quite a bit of other breaking news to cover as a result of today's update, such as Datamined Clone Commandos, the future of Battlefront 2 with a possible Battlefront 3 looming, and as well Dennis teasing once again the offline large-scale game mode. Yeah, a lot of stuff to cover today. But we're gonna start things off with Capital Supremacy and the next map that we should be seeing arrive to the game mode. As I don't know about you, but even though I'm having a lot of fun with Capital Supremacy, I can see definitely myself getting bored with it after a few days, due to it only having one map, Geonosis, for the time being. But as I mentioned in my previous video, DICE did state that new maps would be arriving to the mode in the upcoming updates. And it's very possible that we could be seeing the next map drop as soon as next month in April. As of right now, there is no confirmation on what that map will be, but according to a random message from Ben Walke over on Discord, we might now have a pretty good idea of what it's gonna be. And before we get into that comment, just for context's sake, but it is known that Ben has an alternative account that he's confirmed himself that he switches into to talk to players, essentially pretending to be a random player in order to gauge community interest and spark discussion organically. Anyways, the reason I'm mentioning that is that it's very possible that he may have had forgotten to switch accounts when he wrote this. As today on Discord he said, "Can someone please make Capital Supremacy work on Theed? I want to run around the city like it's some guerrilla/urban warfare, sad face." And yeah, this comment is quite literally out of left field and left a lot of people confused on why the community manager would randomly say something like this. He's either teasing or sent out of the wrong account on mistake, as there's no other way to interpret it. But as we've known from the previous data mines on the game, that Naboo was one of the maps in the game data for Capital Supremacy along with Mos Eisley, Tatooine. And seeing Ben mention Naboo is not surprising at the very least, and I have a feeling that map has been mostly complete for quite some time now, especially considering how long it's been in the game files. DICE probably needed to hold it off from release due to either needing to add some finishing touches to it, or like they've done many times in the past before, and hold out on finished content in order to have something to quickly release later on. And yeah, I wouldn't put it past DICE to do just that again, as I would rather have had Naboo on release like everyone else. But this is unfortunately the reality of Battlefront 2, and DICE are forced to do this because of their small team size. Next up, as usually is the case of game updates, is new information datamined from the game files that often of course has people excited for what new content we'll be getting. It's still pretty early, so it's possible that not all the new game data has been scoured by the dataminers just yet. But we do have some pretty juicy news already. In this being that not only the Clone Commando DC-17M blaster rifle now being in the game files, but as well a file referencing actual Clone Commandos themselves. The weapon data was found first, and that was a little suspicious, as why would DICE have files for the DC-17M in the game? A blaster rifle that was only used by the Clone Commandos. I mean, sure, hypothetically they could add the DC-17M as the new standard blaster for maybe the Assault class to use. But that would be pretty unlikely, and would also mean that they'd have to add new blasters for the other classes too. Not to mention the DC-17M itself is an incredibly versatile weapon, capable of fulfilling multiple combat roles due to its ability to reconfigure into either a standard blaster assault rifle, a compact sniper rifle, or even an anti-armor grenade launcher. So putting that in the hands of normal troopers would be a weird choice for DICE to do. But not long after that, A file path referencing Clone Commandos in the Trooper section along with the DC-17M as its ability was soon found, giving us even more evidence that Clone Commandos could definitely be coming to the game in the near future. And it honestly makes perfect sense. As originally, I believe DICE did plan to have Clone Commandos and Droid Commandos to be packaged together in the Infiltrator class. However, due to their release schedule, DICE weren't able to finish the Clone Commandos in time for the update. So instead, they decided to replace them with the ARC Trooper, which was originally meant for the scrap Sentinel class. And well, it was pretty much already finished content for the most part. So the switch made a lot of sense at the time. And by doing so, DICE was still able to stay on schedule, and at the same time release a new class featuring Commandos, despite not having the Clone Commandos themselves, which of course are the very definition of infiltrators. Now, seeing as the original and the sequel trilogy factions have still yet to get their own infiltrator class, I don't see DICE releasing an entire new class for the prequels just for the sake of getting the Clone Commando out there. Instead, I think chances are pretty high that the Clone Commando will fulfill the role that the ARC Troopers were originally meant to do at one point, and that is to replace the Wookiees as the Republic's Enforcer class on all the maps, but Kashyyyk. Now, would it make sense to have Clone Commandos as the Enforcer class and ARC Troopers as Infiltrators? No, obviously not. But would it be an excuse for DICE to stick Commandos in the game after being late with them and not wanting to admit it? Yeah, of course. As like I've said before, there was simply too much hints and teases before the update that Clone Commandos would be originally part of the Infiltrator class. And then for some reason they magically last minute weren't. I'm not gonna lie, it was always pretty fishy. And Jay Ingram's excuse on why they picked ARCs over Commandos for Infiltrators was just downright laughable, that I knew something was going on behind the scenes and they couldn't tell us. Either way, it's hard to say when Commandos will exactly arrive to Battlefront 2. But for players who were looking forward to using Clone Commandos in the game, then they once again have something to look forward to. With the release of Capital Supremacy, design director Dennis Brandval also decided to make an appearance on Reddit today to answer some fan questions regarding the future of Battlefront 2, as there are rumors going around that Battlefront 3 is in the concept phase, and will be expected to release on the new generation of consoles. Which yeah, that makes a lot of sense and I can totally see that happening. However, this news has scared some people into thinking that DICE are abandoning Battlefront 2 now to start development work on Battlefront 3. In an effort to ease players, Dennis replied to this by saying that DICE are working on Battlefront 2 and only that, and that they're far from done on this one. And yeah, that sounds about right, exactly what I'd expect him to say. As Battlefront 3 is apparently going to feature Benioff and Weiss's Old Republic trilogy, and the first movie of that trilogy isn't coming out until either 2021 or 2022. So there isn't really that much for Disney to provide DICE to even really work on when it comes to Benioff and Weiss's Old Republic trilogy, as the first movie is really only in pre-production. They're still a long way from filming it. And who knows, Battlefront 3 may also plan to contain content of Rian Johnson's Star Wars version of Harry Potter Trilogy 2. And not to mention, we still don't know when the next generation of consoles are coming out either. So what I'm trying to say is that it's still far too early for DICE to be putting any heavy development work into a Battlefront 3, as it just wouldn't make sense for them to be doing all of that at this moment in time. Besides, what else do people expect Dennis to say anyways? Oh yeah, we're actually ceasing all development on Battlefront 2 in order to work on Battlefront 3, for a movie that isn't even coming out until 3 or 4 years later. No, just no, that would be awful PR on DICE and EA's part. And I'm sure DICE's plan is to keep making content for the game at the very least until the end of 2019. Dennis also dropped some teases again for the large-scale offline mode, revealing to players that the mode is still supposed to come out, but its release has taken longer than expected, most likely due to DICE shifting focus to other areas in the game as per what Ben Walke has said before and also the some_info leak. However, Dennis did mention the state that the newly worked AI from the Capital Supremacy mode unfortunately won't be replacing the current AI in arcade mode due to a lack of resources. although he did hint that DICE will look to different ways to satisfy that PvE itch, and that most likely be the new AI included in the large-scale offline mode instead of arcade, which according to some _info's leak, we do know that the new AI are in that mode working just fine on half of the current maps in the game. Right now, the question is all on time and when those arcade devs will be able to be moved back in order to continue the large-scale offline mode. But Dennis's comments certainly show that while that mode may be currently on pause for the time being, it certainly isn't cancelled, and that's good news. Lastly, this isn't offline mode related, but I thought it'd be interesting to add anyways, as Dennis also confirmed some information that we all knew last year from a previous leak, which is that DICE originally planned for Clone Wars to be released as Season 2 back in either February or March of 2018. And for some people that came as a shock, even though DICE had been developing Grievous and Obi-Wan since 2017 just for that season alone. But as we of course know that due to Battlefront 2's rocky release, that plans had to be shifted and certain things took priority in order to be changed, like the progression system, which is why we only got Clone Wars content later that year instead. But regardless, I did find this interesting that Dennis, the design director of DICE, actually admitted and showed that a lot of the leaks that we had about this stuff last year was completely true, which now kind of makes me want to go back and read up on some of the other stuff from those leaks just for kicks. Oh, and on a small quick note, but as some of you have noticed if you've played the game today, but all of the heroes, thanks to the update, have now been automatically unlocked for every single player. I noticed this pretty quickly on my PC version, which I haven't really unlocked that much on there, and randomly I had everything unlocked today. DICE have still yet to comment on this, and whether this was intentional or simply a mistake, we don't know. Either way, I like it, despite some people not feeling the same way about it, and I totally get that too. But in my opinion, it honestly should have been like this from the very beginning. I think heroes should always be free, and instead, if you have to, only charge for the cosmetics like other games do. So here's hoping DICE don't go back on this, in case it really was a mistake. Because if they do, then oh wow, yeah, I don't want to think about the backlash they'll get from doing that. It won't be pretty. But that'll do it for this Battlefront update. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel to not only support it, but keep up with Star Wars news, gaming, and canon lore released every week. And consider following me on Twitter and Facebook to never miss out on the latest Star Wars related content. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.